Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our Only Murders in the Building Season 3, Episode 6 reaction and review. This episode is titled Ghostlight. Now, before we begin, there's an important message we need to get across to all of you. Gideon is with us. Did it work? Did it
I
work?
hope so. I hope
Gideon,
so.
are you here? Listen.
You have to include him. You can't sweep him away.
No, and there's no broom in here, so we can't sweep him away even if we try. Now, this episode is interesting in the sense of I can imagine there being some people out there being like, I wish there were more clues. I wish we got a little bit further in the investigation. But
I'm one of those people.
I think for me, it's a ride I was happy to go on because it was kind of creepy and atmospheric. And I think I said this in the preview that I'm a fan of like old school Scooby-Doo cartoons, and this episode made me feel very much like I was in that world where you had a possible ghost that wasn't really a ghost. It's just Jerry Blau living at the Gooseberry Theater.
Yeah, I didn't dislike this episode. It was a fun episode. I love haunted theater ghost stories as well. But I did want to see a little bit of progression in the story. And just honestly, it was really tough to see Charles and Oliver and Mabel have that fight, and what Oliver said to Mabel basically being like, go get a real job. I'm just like, it was so hurtful, and it's something that you can't really walk back. And especially coming from Oliver, the first season we saw him, he was borrowing money from his son, unemployed, and trying to continue to live like this lavish lifestyle. And now that he's back on Broadway, he's going to act like he's better than Mabel, who's still trying to find herself. She's a young person. It was a tough episode. It was a good episode, and we obviously needed to see the trio actually split off, but it was tough.
We'll get into a little bit more of why that happened, where they go from here, but also the clues that we did get in this episode, which could be interesting, but could also be red herrings. We will look at both possibilities. So before we do go any further here, be sure to join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below. Every week we have a live stream over there. We have discussions all about Only Murders in the Building. We have one of them coming up tonight that you guys do not want to miss. So check that out, and also hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other coverage that we're doing here all season long.
Thank you to all our Patreons. It's been really fun talking about Only Murders in the Building over there every week on the live stream, and we're really looking forward to seeing everyone tonight.
Okay, so let's just start off here with the trio, because we just got into that a minute ago, and it feels like this was sort of a natural place that we had to get, because this tension has been there for a lot of the season. Doesn't make it fun to watch, but it's a situation where we saw, what you said, Oliver being awful to Mabel, also not nice to Charles at all, basically being like, you didn't have a career anymore until I brought you on board, even though you can't really sing. And basically all three of them are just going at each other for various things that have been on their mind. And I think a lot of it is like they're so frustrated with themselves that they have to take out this anger on somebody, and because they're around each other, they're not making any progress in the investigation, they all just become easy targets.
Yeah, it's a situation that's been building all season, where everything that could go wrong for Oliver with the play, his star is dead, it's all sort of falling apart, is happening. This is his big chance. We have seen Oliver in the past, like I said, borrowing money from his son. Now he finally is able to be like, I'm back, I'm able to stand on my own 2 feet, like this really needs to happen for me. So there's a lot of pressure on him. He's, in love with Loretta. He feels very confident. I think we all feel very confident that she's the person who wrote Pig in Ben's dressing room. I mean, he did like the comparison of the handwriting, wiped it away. He's covering this up because he thinks that she's the person who wrote it. I think she is.
Yeah.
Does he think that she's the person who murdered him? I don't think so, actually. I think he thinks that she wrote it but didn't kill him. I think the same thing. I think she wrote it, she didn't kill him. Then there's everything with Charles. He's under a lot of stress. Joy has left him. He's doing this play where he's doing the show so many nights a week. Like he's just unable to really hold it together. He's pulled a little bit between the play and wanting to investigate the murder. And then you have Mabel, who is just like, we know that there's more to this. Yes, they arrested somebody. That's the wrong person. Like there's more to it than this. And she really wants to have her olds back with her investigate. We all want that. We're
Yeah.
all watching the show to watch the three of them together. We're in episode 6 now, and they have barely been together. Like this season has really had them in different directions in their lives, where Mabel is really on her own and trying to figure out things for herself. And you mentioned this in another video. She is kind of in this lonely, vulnerable state. And who comes in? Robert Tobert. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Like I have said many times, I think that he's involved in these murders for sure. I think he is one of the murderers. I think there's 2, but he knows something. I think it's too much of a coincidence that she's really in this vulnerable spot and he's just like, hey, I'm your new love. Like, let's check out your board. Like, it's very strange. And we saw this also with Charles throughout the episode too, where he started getting not jealous, but like, hey, why is he around? It's supposed to be the 3 of us. And her just being like, you guys aren't here. Like, I want to continue on doing the podcast, but you guys aren't here. Like, I want to do this. Cinda was right of all the people. So she wasn't back for no reason. We're gonna see Mabel moving forward, working with Cinda, and continue to work with Robert Tobert.
Cinda was right. 3 words you really never want to hear.
Know.
But we're in a spot now where Mabel is kind of functioning as the voice of a lot of viewers who are frustrated that the trio is not together. But fundamentally, yeah, me too. But fundamentally, I do understand it from the vantage point of Oliver's getting to do this thing that he's been wanting to do for most of his career. He thinks this is a big opportunity. He doesn't want to waste it. Yes, he's also letting it all get to his head and kind of not allow him to see reason. None of these people, I think, are being sympathetic enough to Charles and the fact that we didn't see Joy for that long on the show, but he was with her for a year. Like, there was that year time jump. So this is not like a small breakup that he's going through here. And, he's trying to play it off. But I think if these people are his friends, which they are, they should realize that this is Charles just playing it off, that he's not okay. But because Mabel, I think, is so frustrated with her olds and wanting to solve this case that she's not really able to focus on a lot of that. And now I have said with, your guy Robert Tobert here that I don't think that he is the killer, but I do agree with you in the sense that I think he clearly has some sort of ulterior motive. And I think he's a documentarian, but he's never been painted as like a true crime documentarian. He's not one of these people like Cinda who has just been out trying to solve cases all the time. So for him to be so invested in this particular one, it's either one, he sees this as a huge payday, which is sort of where I'm looking at it right now, or 2, he's actually involved in what happened to Ben and he wants to be there in order to cover his tracks.
Cover up.
Well,
listen, he's a documentarian, so he's always running the camera. He was absolutely there for that fight with Ben and Loretta and Charles punching him. He was there. And I've said this before too. I don't believe that Ben ran off from that fight and was like, give me that camera. I'm just going to go into the room by myself with the camera. That's a no. That's not how documentaries work. The person behind the camera is going to be like, no, I need to be in there to film it. And I'm going to be. You don't tell me. I tell you. I'm the person that you hired to do this. So I'm coming with you. So it's just Tobert knows way more than he's letting on. For sure, his hands are dirty. Is he the murderer? Yes, he absolutely is.
We're clearly setting up a situation where this is all going to come out. Either he's the murderer or he's opportunistic or whatever, and Mabel's going to feel really dumb and be really hard on herself. But it's ultimately, like we said, she's vulnerable. She's struggling. I think she's more willing to trust than she probably would be. Now, you mentioned the fight. What happened on stage? Like, we don't have a clear timeline of everything that happened on opening night yet, but I think it's becoming increasingly clear that this was sort of a defining incident that happened on stage before the start of the show. They've sort of created somewhat of a timeline that this is around half an hour before this situation happens. Jerry Blau, who's living at the theater, he manages to hear it, which is how Oliver ends up finding out that this happened. But if this guy has heard it, then the question obviously then becomes, okay, how many other people also heard it? And I think the big fundamental question is, what exactly did Ben say to Loretta that caused her to say exactly the word pig? Because that is
Yeah.
really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's interesting to me as well. I mean, Jerry tried to be like, "Oh, you're with the person that has the bad temper." And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, does she have a bad temper? Or did Ben step out of line and she was standing up to be like, absolutely not
Yeah.
okay with this. You're a pig, and have that fight? Because it seemed like he was like grabbing her like a little roughly. That wasn't part of the play, and there was some sort of fight going on. Like, I don't know. I don't she's not the killer.
No.
For me, she is absolutely not the killer. There was some sort of problem that they were having, and they were having a fight, and he stepped the line and she put him in place. I
Yeah.
don't think that she's got this bad violent temper. It's just like, no. And I think Oliver knows that as well. He has spent a lot of time with her. So I think when he made the decision not to tell Charles, not to tell Mabel what he's sort of learned about her and her temper and the fight and whatever, and he just decides to go and like clean the mirror, it's because he knows in his heart that she's not the killer.
No, he knows she's not the killer. I think, he also clearly knows that she's hiding something. We've got these
Yep.
clippings, and you sort of brought up this theory on this past video, our last preview, and I think this is I think this is correct, that she is not Dickie's biological mother, and that's why Dickie is sort of in some of the clippings, and maybe we'll find more about that in the relatively near future. I'm still so hung up, and I don't know why. It's not like this episode brought any new clues on this, but you don't call someone a pig unless it's something very specific that they've said or done or treated you a certain way. Like, I would call Ben a jerk. I would call Ben some other words that we can't say on the channel that would get us demonetized, but pig is such a specific insult.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, my theory is
Yeah.
is that it has something to do with Dickie, because if Loretta is actually Dickie's mom and she had said something like, "Oh, my sweet Dickie," sort of like talking like she's his mom, maybe Ben was, she said he's been being really awful to Dickie and treating him so badly. Maybe he made some comment that was just like, "It's enough. I can't take it anymore."
All right, so a couple of new possible clues here to
Yeah.
get into. KT's office. So, stage manager here, KT, she always has her office unlocked. Anybody can come in there at all times. So why was it locked on opening night so Howard couldn't do the ritual?
Yeah, and why were there people in there seemingly talking or arguing or whatever?
Yeah.
My theory, tinfoil hats on,
Yeah.
this is just a distraction, that there was nothing really going on in there, just that Katie was there. I think she was in her office having an argument with somebody about something, and she may have been in there having an argument with Ben. My feeling is probably after that fight on stage where Ben stormed off, before he went to his dressing room, he probably went to go see the stage manager and was like, "I can't work with that woman. You need to get that woman out of here. Get her out of here. You need to talk to Oliver. She's got to go." And I think that that's all that really was.
Okay, I've got two different thoughts here.
Okay.
If this is related to the case, then it's a situation where whoever did something to Ben was in that office sort of plotting it and getting it ready to go. Maybe they're preparing the cookies or making sure that they're all just ready to be eaten. But
that means that that person's in there with a second person.
Yeah, that means that person is in there. So your two killer theory to some extent would then have to be right, or there would at least have to be multiple people who are aware of it. So that's sort of a tricky endeavor, but they would also then have to know that, okay, KT is not going to be in here at this point. We can lock this office up. We'd be okay. And that takes a lot of planning, a lot of specificity.
Especially on opening night when there's a million people walking around the theater. KT could come back to her office at any point, at any time.
Here's what I think it probably is. Two people doing some hanky-panky in there before the start of the show.
But they sound like they're arguing.
They're having a mid-hanky-panky argument, everybody.
Okay.
Listen, they do not want anyone to know what's going on with their torrid affair. So they're having, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe they're like, should we tell somebody? No, but okay. The other thing that's really interesting coming out of this episode is this idea of the leading man cocktail as brought to us by Jonathan with Dr. C, where we're starting to get a better quote unquote sense as to what is going on here with these two.
Yeah, I still think that Dr. C is also a distraction. I think he's just trying to lead away from everything that's kind of going on. And, there's this, I put on your hard hats. I didn't like this part of the episode. I just found it really hard to believe that Jonathan was going to take this cocktail. And I'm not going to say everything that's in it, but that last thing that he mentioned that's in it, unless you're already sort of dabbling into that type of stuff, as soon as if I was on going and doing like a play and this doctor came to me and was like, oh, all the leads are taking this, it has this, and that last thing, I'd be like, no. Like, I know that certain drugs are like just like really bad, like highly addictive. Like, I just can't see Jonathan being like okay, even under the worst pressure, that because he said, I don't want to be the leading man. I'm doing this for Howard. Okay, well, he's not going to be taking that leading cocktail for Howard. Like, there's just no way. So either Jonathan has been doing stuff like this the whole time, which would come out of nowhere, or like he wouldn't do it. I didn't believe it. So I was kind of like, okay, the whole point of this was to have it come up, the ingredients that are in this leading man cocktail, so that our trio can kind of be like, okay, well, if there's this thing in it, why didn't that show up on the talk screen? And that's the same question I have. It's just like, why didn't it? And if you go back to the first episode, when Ben comes back from the dead, he says that, he thinks that the doctors think it was something he ate. So probably an allergic reaction, which is, the theory we've been working with this whole time, that it isn't something to do with the drugs or the leading man cocktail or anything like that. If Ben was taking this leading man cocktail, then that means either he wasn't taking it. And he was just pretending he was taking it, and Dr. C was giving him these drugs and he was just tossing them, so his blood was clean. Or because he's Ben Glenroy, the people at the hospital are covering it up because he doesn't want like his name splashed all over page 6. Dickie was with him. Dickie's, a manager. He may have managed the situation to be like, listen, this can't get out. This is what's been happening. Like, his blood needs to be clean.
Okay. What if, I'll keep the tinfoil. I think we already put the tinfoil hat on, but you know what?
Mine's on.
It's still there. What if somebody else paid Dr. C and was like, come up with just this one night for a special edition of the leading man opening night cocktail that's got some stuff that will cause some big problems for Ben and maybe make him drop dead, but also not have it show up in some sort of talk screen so that it is sort of secret. Maybe there's like
The
some
magic drugs that don't show up in a
Hey,
talk
it is some
screen.
like mystical snake venom that is from like one snake species. I think there's like this island called Snake Island off of Brazil that's got like 80 different snakes on it. Maybe it is something
This
that is
just
just
sounds like witchcraft.
okay. We're basically our witchcraft. I mean, there's one or two reasons why what happened to Ben happened on stage. It is either something that he ate, which he did suggest. I think we've all sort of went with the idea that there's something maybe in the cookies,
Yep.
or there's something that went on here with Dr. C. I mean, yes, Dr. C could very well be a red herring, and that this is just not something that really matters that much.
No.
It might just exist as sort of a way to bring us into this idea that Jonathan really doesn't want to be the lead of this play. Like, he
Yes.
doesn't like everything that's sort of going on with it.
Yeah, my fear going forward is that because we had this whole episode where Jonathan was like, I was doing this for Howard. Howard really wants to be the leading man, that we're going to end up in this play with Howard being the leading man. And while we had this sort of big production
Yeah.
with Howard and KT, where she's also like, oh, I wanted to be a director. Oh, I wanted to be a leading man. Let's have our moments together in the sun.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that that's where it ends. I really like the Howard character a lot. I've always liked him since the beginning. He's funny.
Yeah.
He's smart. Like, he's a fun character to have around. But his performance here didn't give me the same sort of like awe and chills that Meryl Streep did with her song. I was like, he's good.
Yeah.
But he's not a leading man, and he's not a big enough name. I was shocked to learn that Jonathan was actually the new lead. I was like, what? So Jonathan doesn't have any star power, but so you go from Ben to someone that's an unknown, and Oliver's just going with that. It was kind of odd.
I would have bought it more if they just had some little drop in line where Jonathan's like, yeah, I'm the lead for now. They're looking for somebody else, but I'm taking it for now, because that's something that this show is not really putting a lot of stock into at the moment. Because if you're Donna, or if you are Cliff, aka the person who really killed Ben, and I know we haven't talked a lot about Cliff being the killer in this episode.
Hey, he hasn't been around very much, which gives some fire to maybe he's the killer, because that seems to be the MO of this show.
Yeah, they're saving him. I want to believe that they're saving him, and it's not just that I'm wrong. But okay, but no, I think they need a big star to sort of sell everything. And for me, I'm going to be a lot more satisfied if this is just a moment where Howard gets to live his dream for this one little moment. KT gets to live her dream. And then it's like just a fun little emotional thing. And there were some fun emotional moments sort of throughout this episode that, if they are just what they are, like, that's okay. I don't need them to really be that much more. Like when, Mabel is going at the olds at the end of it. I thought Selena was really, really good. I thought that, Steve Martin's physical comedy when he's locked up in the closet, just stumbling around and coming out of it and saying, "Mother," at Mabel. I that stuff was just really fun.
It was really fun. I wish that they had more to do with Charles this season. It feels like his storyline was really connected to Joy and everything that was kind of going on. Yeah, there's the punch and stuff like that, but this episode that felt like they kind of just didn't know what to do with him.
I just had a big revelation more than 20 minutes into this video.
Mm-hmm.
Oliver's going at Charles and being like, I should have hired someone who sings. Have you not heard Angel in flip-flops? What is wrong with you? He is more musical successful than you will ever be.
All right. No, Oliver, this was a tough episode for me and Oliver. He was really mean to both of them. And it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to kind of find their way back together, or going into the next season, which hasn't been renewed, but I feel like it's going to be. Are they actually going to be able to come back together, or is this just the beginning of the end where Mabel is going to go off and work with Cinda and become Bloody Mabel and have her own podcast and move into Sting's place?
That's how I feel about her not
Yeah,
working with the olds. Like
I
nobody
agree.
Nobody, yeah, no, nobody wants that. We want them working together. You know, at least I want more of the Arconia. Like, that's where he actually died.
Yeah, like it is interesting that they are spending as much time at the theater as they are, but to be fair, that is the first
Yeah, it
place
is.
that he died. So I'm expecting that they're going to be like, okay, we've searched out the theater, we're done there. Now it's
Yeah.
time to get to the Arconia.
Yeah, it's time, everybody. But it's time for us to say goodbye to this particular review. We will be back soon with the preview for what's coming in episode 7.
Yep.
So hit that subscribe button. Join our Patreon live streams every week talking about Only Murders in the Building. Thank you to everyone who has joined, and we will see you next time.